Unit 2 notes. So you guys already know a lot of what to do for Unit 2. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So what we're doing today is basically graphing lines. We're graphing two lines on the same plane. So let's go ahead and get started. So first let's graph this line. So the first thing I know is we're crossing the y-axis at -5. So we're crossing at -5. And then from there our slope is 3/1. So that means we're going up 3 and over 1 and graphing that line. Okay, so then we're going to go ahead and draw that line right on up. Then let's take a look at our next line here. So we're crossing the y-axis at 2. And then from there, our slope is -1/2. So that means we're going down 1 and over 2. Crossing that line. So what do we notice about these two lines? Well, I noticed that they only cross once. And that makes sense, right? If a line is straight, it's only going to cross at one point. Okay, so that's what we're going to notice. So let's write what point it crossed at. And that's the point 2, 1. And guess what? That's pretty much all we're doing today. So let's take a look at it some more. So let's take a look at this one. Graph the two linear equations on the same coordinate plane. Okay, so let's start with this one. This one I can graph really easily. So I'm crossing the y-axis at -6. Then my slope is 3, or 3/1. So I'm going up 1, 2, 3, and over 1. I'm plotting that point, and then I'm going to draw a straight line going through there. So now I'm going to solve this equation for y. Okay, that's the only way I can graph it. So I have 6x minus 2y is equal to 12. Subtract 6x from both sides, then we get a -2y is equal to a -6x plus 12. Now I need to divide both sides by a -2. Okay, when I divide by a -2, that's going to do a couple things. First, I have -6 divided by -2. That's going to give me a 3. 12 divided by -2, that's going to give me a -6. So what do I notice? This line turned out to be the same as this line right here. I've already graphed that line. So it's the same line, right? That is such a mind blow. It's a great thing in math when it happens like that. Okay, so it's the same line. So that's all. That's it. I'm done. Okay, so let's take a look at this first one. What is a system of linear equations? So you can go ahead and write that in the first box there. And a system of linear equations is a solution to a system, is a point, x, y, where they cross. Okay, so where the two lines cross is going to be a point, and that's the solution of our system. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. Oops, that didn't work very well. Okay, a solution of 2, 3 means that the lines are going to cross at the point 2, 3. Okay, pretty straightforward. Pause the video if you need more time to write it down. Let's take a look at the three types of solutions. The first one is if there's just one solution. So they're crossing at one point, like this point right here. Okay, next, there's parallel lines. Okay, if they never cross each other, if they have the same slope. So you might want to write that down. This means that they have same slope, different y-intercept. Okay, and last but not least is this guy right here. Same line means they have infinitely many solutions. So you guys could also abbreviate this as IMS if you want to. Okay, if you don't want to write all of that out. So let's take a look at some of the steps of doing this. So the steps to graphing a system of linear equations. First thing you do, you're just going to graph the first line. Pretty straightforward. Second thing, graph the second line. 3, find the ordered pair where they intersect. So if they intersect at a point, you're going to write what that point is. If they're parallel lines, it means that they don't have a solution. If they're on the same line, there's infinitely many solutions. And again, you could write IMS if you don't want to write out infinitely many solutions. So let's take a look at graphing some of those. So one thing, and you have a little box at the top of your page. It says solving systems by graphing. All I want you to put in there is just another reminder that it is as simple as graphing two lines. Okay, so it's as simple as graphing two lines. So let's take a look at number 3. We're going to graph those lines on number 3. So we're crossing the y-axis at 8 here. Then we're going down 1 over 1. And I'm going to go ahead and connect that line. For number 3, we're crossing at -7. Then we're going up 1, 2, 3, 4, and over 1. And draw that line. And now I see that they cross. And so to me, it looks like they're crossing at that point. So we're going to call that point our solution. So we need to name it. So it looks like we're hitting the x-axis at about 4. So I would say 4 is one of my solutions. And then it looks like we're hitting the y-axis, or the y point. It looks like it's at about 4, 2. Remember, coordinate points are x, y. Okay, so I would call that 4, 4. Let's go ahead and graph this next one. Now what I'm noticing is that they have different slopes. So that means they should intersect one time. So this one is crossing the y-axis at 6. Then we're going down 1 over 2. We're going to graph that line. Okay, then we're going to cross at 1 for the next line. And we're going to go up 1 over 2. And we're going to cross lines. Now, here's the thing with graphing systems and solving this way. It's really inaccurate. Okay, because it's so inaccurate, you might get a little bit of a different answer. Your lines might be crossing at a little bit of a different point. So I'm going to just say that this point right here is where we're crossing. So I would call that point probably at about 5 for x, it looks like, and then maybe about 3 for y. Again, yours might be a little different. You might be 1 or 2 off. That's okay. Graphing to solve is not actually that accurate. Okay, so let's take a look at number 5. So for number 5, we're crossing the y-axis at 5. Then we're going down 1 over 1, and we're going to draw that line. Okay, then we're going to have, for the next one, we're crossing at -3. Remember, your y-intercept is always that number that's being added on. And then we're going up 1 over 1. And I can go ahead and graph that line. So now again, I want to estimate the point at which they're crossing. You can just pick the closest corner if you want, because again, it's not going to be exact. So to me, it looks like it's crossing at about 4 for x and at about 1 for y. Okay, so all we're doing, graphing 2 lines, seeing where they cross. So let's take a look at this next one. So we're crossing the y-axis at 5. Then we're going down 1 over 1. So I can go ahead and draw in that line. Here we're crossing at a -4. Then we're going down 1 over 1. Well, here's the problem. What I should have noticed from the very start of this is that these two equations have the same slope. If it just says -x, that's the same as -1 over 1. So both of these equations have a slope of -1 over 1. Okay, what does that tell us? Well, that tells us that they're not going to cross because they're parallel. They have different y-intercepts but the same slope. So they're not going to cross. So that means here I have no solution. Okay, no solution. Let's take a look at those last two. So again, what do I notice about this one? Negative and -1. -1, -1. So to me, before I even start graphing something, okay, this is probably going to have no solution. But I still need to graph it to check. So I'm crossing the y-axis at 1. And then I'm going down 1 over 1, because remember, -x is the same as -1 over 1x. So I'm going down 1 over 1, graphing that line. Same thing for this one. I'm crossing at 4, down 1 over 1, graphing that line. So those are never going to cross. It's a railroad track. Think of if you're driving down a railroad, all of a sudden the two tracks cross. You have a problem, right? Because the train's going to crash because we no longer have a track. So these are never going to cross. So we have no solution. Let's take a look at number 8. We're crossing the graph at -3. Then we're going up 1 over 1. We can go ahead and draw that line in. So, draw that line. Okay, so for the next one, we're crossing at 1, then going down 1 over 1. Draw that line in. So again, they're going to cross at a point. So I'm going to do my best to estimate what that point is. So to me, it looks like I'm going over about 2. Remember, x comes first. Then I'm going down on the y-axis, so that's going to be negative. So I'm estimating my solution to be about 2, -1. So that concludes your note video today, showing that you finished your note sheet, and I'll go ahead and get you that homework. Thanks for listening, guys.